So over your career, have you seen, because the concept of executive presence, started to play out a few years ago, have you seen this playing out in your field over the past few years and over your career?
I think when I got into my first executive role, that was when I really got taught about it. So I didn't really realize that it was a thing until probably about 4 or 5 years ago when I got told, you've got to be present, you need to change the way you're speaking, you need to change your language. So some of my language was very relaxed. It was very sort of nonchalant. And I was just like, oh yeah, this, that, and the other, exactly like that. Versus actually speaking clearly, slowly, and articulating what I mean very clearly. That changes your executive presence because you're well thought, you're not speaking really, really fast, you've thought through the actual process of what you're talking about, you know the outcome you want to achieve. And then the actual having presence in a room is about feeling like you're meant to be there and knowing you're meant to be there. And I think that's really important. So if you don't feel confident that you've got anything to offer in that room, sometimes I'd say don't go, because you want to feel like, actually I've got something to say here and I actually know that I can change the dynamic, or I can actually get a really great outcome in this, so I'm definitely going to be in that room. And there were some rooms that I probably didn't feel like I should be in, but I went in to listen, and what I did in those rooms was observe the other executives and how they did it. And I think you learn from your peers and you learn from people up above and how they do come across. And we write a lot of the speeches for secretary and the ministers, and it's watching them deliver those speeches that's also given me a lot of my executive presence to see them come out. For instance, the Premier, Jacinta Allen, she gets up on stage and she's fantastic. She will speak so clearly, so confidently, and she'll have a bit of fun while she's up there, but she gets to the point as well. So that's always been really important for me. So I hope that's kind of answered your question.
It does. Look, it is a skill, and I think it's worth exploring if you are heading into those senior roles, to actually explore all areas of this whole executive presence minefield. And I say minefield because a lot of people get really bamboozled by it. Well, what am I supposed to do? What's the most important thing that I should be focusing on? So it is a whole-hearted, rounded type process, I think, anyway, and one where voice is important, how you behave is important, your values are important, how you dress is important, your grooming is important, how you conduct yourself, your whole persona, is really what it's all about. So do you mentor people in your role? I imagine you have a lot of women that you actually...
I do. I have a mentor. I've met a mentee. She chose me, and she wants, this woman said, oh, can you please mentor me? And I said, absolutely, I can. And it was the first time I've ever been asked to do it formally. And I was quite blown away. And I said to her, why me? Why do you want me? And she said, oh, you're the face of DTP. You're out there, you're talking, you're warm, you're kind, and people gravitate toward that warmth. And I had never really thought of myself that way. And it's just because I'm a little bit charismatic and I'm interested. But the other thing is I'm actually interested in others. Like, I'm curious about what they've got to say. I mean, other people, you can learn so much more from them than I can from myself. And so, yes, I do mentor. I've actually mentored also a young man once. That was really interesting. He asked me loads of questions, and that was more when I was being very adventurous and I was doing big deals, and I just went for it. And he said, I've never seen anything quite like it. You're just out there, you're giving it a go, and you just throw yourself in there. And I said, well, that's what you got to do, isn't it? And otherwise you can't build a business. You can't sit in an office and think, oh, people are going to come to me. They're going to, when you're hiding behind a computer. You can't do that. You've got to be front and center. You've got to be out there. You've got to be talking to people, and you've got to understand what's happening in your environment, and you've got to be seen, unfortunately, if that's what you want to do. Beg your pardon?
Have to be proactive.
Yeah, you have to be very proactive. So yeah, I do mentor a few people when they come and ask for me for it. And I've actually had a lot of mentors myself. So I'm not shy to say to someone, I don't know how to do this, or I've asked about how to do leadership better. I've asked plenty of questions. I've seen a lot of women who own a room, and I've asked them, how do you do that? So, one of my mentors, she was in a room with about 12 or 13 political businessmen, And she owned the room. No one was saying a word, no one's interrupting. And she spoke so beautifully and articulately.
Mhm.
And so I asked her to be my mentor, and she said, absolutely, I will. And I said, how do you do that? And she said, I trust myself. I've done my research. I've got an opinion on every issue that I know about or that I'm interested in. And then I take a side, and that's what I believe in. And so therefore I've got the confidence to be there. So yeah, it was really fascinating.
Yeah, that's true. You never ever stop learning in whatever field you're in. I'm the same. Having been in this industry for over 20 years in my own business, but you never stop learning. There's always other
Never.
people to learn from. And goodness me, this whole pandemic that we've been through, this extraordinary situation, is probably one of the biggest learning curves I think I've gone through anyway.